Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. It's Dani. In today's video tutorial, I'm gonna show you how to make this beautiful crochet bag. It is so fun and quick to make. There's gonna be two different closing options that I'm gonna be teaching you, one with buttons and this one with the zipper. The button is a really good alternative if you don't like playing with zippers or you're just not comfortable with that. Both of them have a lining and they are a great option for last minute Christmas gifts or even just to make for yourself to keep all your notions, makeups, or whatever you would like. Before we get into the tutorial, I do have to mention that all the links to all the materials that I'm using are going to be listed in the description box, as well as the link to my blog, the PDF pattern, and the kit that it's also available. So all the links in the description box of this video. And now let's just get into the tutorial. For this bag, you're gonna be using cotton yarn. This is 24/7 cotton by Lion brand. It is a category 4 worsted weight yarn, and we're gonna be using 2 strands of yarn held together, so you need 2 balls of that. You will also need a 6.5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers of any kind, and your tapestry needle. For the closing and lining, you will need either buttons or a zipper. This is a 10-inch zipper, and I'm using 2 large buttons that are 25mm. You will also need 2 pieces of fabric of 12 by 12, a thread that matches the color of the yarn you're going to be using, as well as your sewing needle, or you can use a sewing machine if you have one. It is not necessary, you don't need it, but if you have one, it's great to use. It's not a lot of sewing, so you can do it by hand, no problem. We're gonna begin with the 2 crochet panels that are the outer fabric technically, and we're gonna be crocheting holding 2 strands of yarn together at all times. I'm using 1 strand that I'm getting from each ball, but you can also use both strands from the same ball. That's up to you. Okay, so you're gonna start with a magic or a slip knot, and then your foundation chain will have 27 chains. Now that you have all your chains, we're gonna be working in the back bump of the chains. So as you can see in here, these are the little bumps that we have at the bottom of the chain. We're gonna be crocheting through these ones so we have a more neat look. So in the second chain from the hook, you're gonna make a single crochet. Then you're gonna go into the next chain or the bump of the chain and make a double crochet. Now you're gonna continue with this pattern. You're gonna go into the next one and make a single crochet, and then in the next one a double crochet, single crochet, double crochet, single crochet, double crochet, all the way across your chain. You should have 26 stitches. Once you're done, you're going to chain 1, turn your work, and in that very first space available right here, you're gonna make a single crochet. Then in the next one, you're gonna make a double crochet, then a single crochet, double crochet, repeat the same sequence. You're gonna do this for 17 rows. So continue crocheting until you have 17 rows. Now for the next portion of the bag, we are going to slip stitch for 6 stitches or in 6 stitches until we get to somewhat the middle of the bag. So we have 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1 more, 6 slip stitches. Then you're going to chain 1 to start a new row, kind of. So chain 1. And now your next stitch is going to be a single crochet, then a double crochet. Make sure that you're placing your stitch alternating the single crochet and the double crochet. Same with the previous row, so you should be making your single crochet where there was a double crochet and a double crochet where there was a single crochet. So you're gonna do this for a total of 14 stitches. And then you're gonna have another 6 stitches on the other side that you didn't work. So now you're gonna repeat this row of 14 stitches, chain 1 and turn, for a total of 4 rows. Just working here in the middle for 14 stitches. And you're gonna begin again with single crochet, then double crochet, single crochet, then double crochet in the same pattern stitch that we have been doing so far. So once you're done with your 4 rows, this is how it should be looking like. We have the big main piece, and then we have this little portion in here. Now I'm going to measure about a little bit more than double in yarn, and I'm gonna cut so I can have this strand of yarn to close the bag at the end. Make a little knot to secure the yarn and leave that long tail there so we can sew close later. Now this is one panel. You need to have 2 panels, so repeat the same thing for a second panel to have the 2 panels to close or to make your bag basically. Once you have your 2 bags, I'm going to show you now the first closing option. And the first one, it's going to be buttons. And I'm showing you this one first because you need to continue crocheting if you want to do this option. If you want the zipper, then skip ahead in the video and you will find the zipper option later. So you can skip all the way to the zipper option if that's the one you want to make. But for the buttons, we have in here the 2 panels. Now we're going to be working with the yarn again. And the top of your bag, it's basically the foundation chain from the beginning. So we don't have yarn in here to work with, so we need to bring a new strand of yarn. So this is the foundation chain. So you're gonna bring your yarn and insert your hook right in the first stitch available. Bring up your yarn, and before you start crocheting, we're going to leave a very long strand of yarn again. So once you do this, I'm going to pull the yarn in here, and I'm gonna have again double the length of the side of the bag just so I can sew the side later on and I can use the same yarn and I don't need to attach a new yarn, so less knots. Now you're going to chain 1 and you're gonna make slip stitches. You're gonna make 8 slip stitches, and this is kind of like to get to the middle of the bag. Once you have made 8 slip stitches, here's my last one. We're going to make chains to make the button loop, and in here I'm gonna make 10 chains, but these will depend of how big is your button, how small is your button, and how far down you want to place your button. So if you want your button to be placed lower in the next panel, you need to make your chain longer so it can reach the button. So all of these will depend of how big is your button again and how far you want to place it. For this bag, I am making, like I said, 10 chains. So then to secure the chain, you're going to slip stitch back at the base of the chain in that same stitch. Then you're going to slip stitch another 12 stitches. So in the next stitch, you're gonna slip stitch and you're gonna do this for 12 stitches. Once you get to your stitch 12, you're going to chain again 10 chains or the same number of chains that you did for the first loop, and repeat the same process. You're going to slip stitch back into the base of the chain to secure, and then you should have 7 stitches remaining, and again slip stitch in those last 7 stitches. Now we have the loops ready, and in here we're gonna do the same thing. Have about double in length of yarn just so you can sew it shut later, and then cut. If we have any remaining, we're just gonna cut the excess, but I'd rather have the same yarn so I can use that to close the bag. Now you are going to place the buttons. So bring the next panel, put it on top, and now you're gonna grab your buttons and place them and make sure that the loop can reach far enough, and do the same with the other one. Now you're gonna have to sew the buttons in place. I know this one is a little bit crooked, but I'm gonna fix it right there. Okay, so now you need to sew your buttons in place. I'm gonna be using the same yarn as I used for the bags, and just so that it looks nice and cohesive, you don't have to, you can use any yarn or even just thread. And sew them in place, make sure they're nice and secure. Go a few times back and forth, just to make sure that your buttons are not going anywhere. Once you're done sewing your button in the back, you can just make a few knots to make sure that they're nice and secure. And now you're gonna repeat the same process with the next button. Always placing and making sure that the loop can reach. And once you have that done, now it's time to get the lining ready before we close the bag. For the lining, you're gonna use 2 pieces of fabrics that are 12 by 12 inches. And now what we're gonna do is cut and use the crochet pieces, so the outer fabric in this case, as a template. And you're gonna cut about 1/4 of an inch from the crochet piece or the outer piece. And this is so we have seam allowance, and we have a little bit of extra fabric to sew everything together. And again, cut about 1/4 of an inch more than your outer fabric, which in this case is the crochet piece. And repeat that same thing with the bottom in here. You're gonna cut those 2 corners as well. Make sure they look nice and straight. And we're gonna cut in here as well. Once you have that done, then we can go and close the bag, and the same with the lining. So for the bag itself, we're going to put the 2 right pieces facing each other, which in this case, the right piece on one panel is where the buttons are. The other one doesn't have a right or wrong side, so just put the buttons facing down. And you're gonna use the strands of yarn that you had on the sides to close both sides. And in this case, I'm gonna be using the whip stitch, but you can go ahead and use whatever method you prefer to sew the sides close. And I'm using 1 strand out of the 2 that I had in there, just so the seam is not as bulky. But again, you can do and use whatever method you like. If you want to use both strands of yarn, go ahead and do that. Totally up to you. And then we're gonna do the same on the other side. So on the other side of the bag, do the same thing. Close using the whip stitch or the mattress stitch, whatever stitch you like to close. The whip stitch is basically just this one that we go from the back to the front, from the back to the front. Now that we have both sides sewn together, we're gonna close the bottom in here. So this part, we're gonna use again the strand that we left, and we're gonna close it and sew it shut. So we're gonna use again the whip stitch to close that up. Once the sides and the bottom part are sewn shut, we're going to make the corners. And to do that, we're gonna grab the crochet piece just like this. I did it a little bit fast. So we have it like that, open it up and close in here the bottom. We're going to make the boxy corner and use again the strands of yarn to sew that shut. The strand of yarn will be in the middle, so you're gonna have to sew one side, then go back again in the middle and sew the other side shut, unless you use the other strands of yarn. That's totally up to you. And then I'm gonna go back here in the middle, and I'm gonna use the other strand of yarn that I had in the middle, so I can just make a few knots, and that way it's nice and secure. And in this case, you want to leave the yarn or the ends a little bit on the longer side, just so they are not poking through the other side of the fabric. So just like leaving them like that. They're gonna be in the inside anyway, so we won't see them. And we're gonna do the same thing with the other corner. You wanna open it up like this, match the seams right in the middle like this, and then sew it close. And again, I'm using my tapestry needle to get here in the middle, and I'm gonna make a few knots to make sure all the ends are nice and secure, and then cut about an inch, I would say 1.5 inches, because if you cut them too short, because the fabric it's not super holey, but it can poke through on the outside, and we don't want that. So about 1.5 inches we're gonna cut and leave them like that. And then do the same with the other ends that you might have. And now you can turn your bag inside out. And your bag, it's almost ready. Now make sure that you are taking those corners and making sure they're nice and flat. And you can close it and see how the buttons are placed. Make sure you like it. And your bag is perfectly done. You could leave it like this, but I highly recommend that you make a lining. This is gonna make sure that your bag holds its shape, and then if you're putting heavy stuff inside, that it's not going to stretch with time. Now for the lining, you're gonna do the exact same thing you did for closing the bag. You're gonna put both pieces of fabric with the right side facing each other and repeat the same thing. You're going to sew the sides, then the bottom, and then you're gonna work on the corners. Now, you could do this by hand because it's not a lot of sewing at all, but I'm gonna use my sewing machine because I have one, so why not? So the sides, the bottom, and then pinch the corners and close them. And we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna come back. Like I said, I'm using my sewing machine because why not? Okay, so here I have the lining. It's all sewn together. Looks nice and neat. And now I'm going to fold the top just like this, about 1/2 inch. And this is so when we place it inside the crochet bag, we don't have the raw edge dancing around over there. So we're gonna fold it like this. Like I said, about 1/2 inch. Give it a good press so it's nice and flat. And then you can top stitch with your sewing machine or by hand. And now we're going to place the lining just like this inside the bag, just as it is. Don't turn it inside out because that's just the way it's supposed to be inside the bag. And now that we have it like this, you're going to match the seams on the sides. Make sure it's sitting nice and straight. And again, you're going to match the seams on the sides. And I'm gonna use pins to make sure they're nice and secure on each side. The same thing I'm gonna do on the side of the lining as well. So the corners in here, again, to match the seams, and then on the sides as well, so nothing moves whenever I want to sew this. So now you can sew these by hand again to attach the lining to your crochet bag, or you can also use your sewing machine. I'm gonna use a color thread that is very similar to the yarn that I was using, so you won't even see it. Even with the sewing machine, you won't see it at all. So here I have it perfectly attached to my bag, and now my bag is ready to go. This is such a perfect bag for big items, or for your Kindle or books, or like I said, bigger items will work really well with the buttons. Now, if you want this bag to hold makeup or smaller items like notions or small things that you know they can come out of the bag easily, then the next closing option it's gonna be for you. The zipper is the way to go. It's my personal favorite, but this one, it's just so cute. And you can even add more buttons if you want to make sure it's even more closed. But here is the zipper option that we're going to be making next. And for this one, you will also need your 2 pieces of crochet outer fabric. and then we're going to close it and show you how to add the zipper, which is a little bit different than how we did the buttons. So for the buttons, we closed the bag and then we made the lining. For this option, we're going to be closing everything at the same time. Now for the next closing option, which is the zipper, you're gonna need your 2 pieces of crochet outer fabric and your 2 pieces of lining plus your zipper. And again, the lining fabric needs to be about 1/4 of an inch larger than the crochet piece. And now it's time to assemble everything. So you're gonna grab your zipper and you're gonna put it facing down with the teeth facing down. And you're gonna use clips or pins to attach them onto your crochet piece. Once you have all of that nice and secure, you're gonna bring one of your lining pieces and you're going to put it facing down as well. So the right side will be facing down, and you're gonna use those same pins to attach them and secure them with the zipper and the outer fabric. So what you would be making in here, it's like a sandwich of the zipper between the outer fabric and the lining fabric. So once we have all of that down, you're going to sew the top right here where the top is. And again, you can do it by hand or use your sewing machine. This is how it's looking like. Now I'm going to open this up again and I'm going to use my iron to press down the lining right here so it's not close to the zipper. And then I'm going to do a top stitch on this top part really close to the edge of the zipper. And this is so the lining won't get caught with the zipper. So right here, I'm going to top stitch all the way across. And again, you can do it by hand or use your sewing machine. I'm going to be using my sewing machine and I am using it just as I would use any fabric. So this is how it's looking like. Now we're going to attach the other part of the bag. So you have your next crochet piece and you're gonna grab the one that we just worked on. And again, the teeth of the zipper are going to be facing down. Make sure the sides are aligned. So move them as you need. So the sides are perfectly aligned. And now grab your next lining and you're also going to attach that. So I'm using here these pins because it's a little bit easier than the clips, are a little bit easier than the pins. So now that I have everything clipped down, I'm going to put the next lining piece again facing down and use the same clips so everything is attached, and then I'm going to sew again. Once everything is attached, I'm going to go down again with the top stitch on the side to secure the lining and the outer pieces so the lining doesn't get caught with the zipper. Now that we have all of these pieces attached, we're going to fold it so that both crochet pieces are facing each other and both lining pieces are facing each other. And now we're going to repeat the same closing situation that we did with the buttons. I'm going to use these pins to secure my 2 lining pieces together. We're going to sew the sides, and then for the bottom of the lining, we're going to sew only on these edges right here, making sure that you backstitch a few times, and we're going to leave that middle part open so we can turn the bag right side out. So I'm going to place my pins in here, and again we're going to sew the sides, then we're going to sew the 2 edges in here at the bottom of the bag, leaving this big gap in the middle to turn the bag right side out. Then we're going to work on the corners. So you're going to open the corners of the lining and you're going to align those 2 seams and place some pins and sew them close. Once they're closed, we're going to work on closing the crochet piece. So you're going to bring a strand of yarn. You're going to put them really, really close to the zipper and make a few knots. This is so the zipper and it's not poking through the other side, and if it is, I'll show you how we can fix that. But this is a big step so that that zipper will stay in place inside the bag. And now using the whip stitch again, or whatever method you like, you're going to sew the sides of your bag just as we did with the lining and the previous bag as well. Once that is done, you're gonna do the same thing on the other side. And again, when you're joining the yarn, make sure that you're joining it really close to the zipper and make a really tight knot so the zipper part is not poking through the other side. And repeat the same process, use the whip stitch or whatever method you prefer, and go down and sew the sides close. Once you get to the bottom, you're also gonna do and sew the bottom shut as we did with the lining. In this case, we're gonna sew the whole thing, not leaving any gaps because that's just for the lining. And now we're going to work on the boxy part. So we're gonna align those two seams and sew it shut. Use the two strands that you have in here and make a knot to secure everything in place. And the same as we did with the buttons, leave a little bit of a tail so it doesn't poke through the other side of the fabric. Don't cut too close. Now that we have those two corners done and everything is looking like this, we have the opening in the lining. I'm gonna open my zipper because I forgot. And then we're going to turn everything right side out. Once you do that, and that's why we left a big gap in the bottom of the lining, because that way we can turn everything right side out very nicely, since the crochet part it's a little bit bulky. Once everything is nice, before you close the bottom, you gotta make sure that the boxy corners are good. And in here, as you can see, my zipper end, it's kind of poking through a little bit. So I'm gonna show you what I do so that I can hide that and not have to go and close everything again. I'm gonna bring a piece of yarn from a little bit, like an inch down the zipper, and I'm gonna make it come out right very close to the zipper. And in here with this piece of strand or this piece of yarn, I'm just gonna go back and forth to kind of close that part where the zipper end is, especially if it's poking through a little bit. And I'm gonna go back and forth a few times just to make sure that that part is very nice and close and you're not gonna have any problems. Then go with your needle back where you came in the same spot, so that you can make a knot and secure that yarn really well. Now use your tapestry needle to weave in the end, and I'm gonna just feed that yarn through the same hole, and then I'm gonna just make it appear at the bottom in here, and same with the other end. And then I can just cut whatever's left, but the long ends are just gonna remain inside the bag, in between, so that's good. And now if you have that and it's happening on both ends of your bag, you can make sure to do the same thing on both ends so that, no end of your zipper is poking through. Once that is done, you can go ahead and close the bottom of the lining just like this, again by hand or with your sewing machine. Just stitch along the edge. Once that is done, your bag is pretty much done. So now push that lining inside the bag, and voila, your bag is now ready. I just want to add one little tiny extra touch, which is a zipper pull. And you can do this or leave it like that, or you can add a little charm or something, but I'm gonna make a little braid. So to do that, I'm cutting 12 pieces of yarn, and this is because, as you can notice, my zipper pull has a big hole, so I can feed a lot of pieces of yarn through that. If your zipper does have a smaller hole, you might not be able to have these many strands of yarn. So everything is gonna be based of what kind of zipper you're using and if it has the space to put these many strands. Like I said, if you can do this, you can just add a little charm or just leave it like that. I just like this special little extra touch. I will leave the link of the zipper that I'm using in the description if you're interested, because I really like the look. It's like a vintage zipper. I'm gonna put something heavy or somewhat heavy inside the bag now so I can braid and I don't have to worry about my bag moving too much. So I'm gonna section that in 3 parts and then start braiding. I just really like how this looks. It gives that touch, and it's also yarn, so like, I don't know, I feel like everything goes together. Once you have the length that you like, grab one piece of the strand, and I'm going to wrap it around the braid really tight to make sure that the braid doesn't go anywhere and it doesn't come undone. Do this a few times, pull in as you go so that it's nice and tight. Then grab your tapestry needle, and we're going to thread that. And you're gonna use your needle to pass that thread through the middle, like right behind those loops that you just made, and pull it. It's gonna be really tight, so just pull it through and then tight, and now your braid is nice and secure. Now you can go ahead and cut. I like leaving like 1/2 inch or so to have some fringes. And then that's it. Now your bag is ready, and I just love it so much. I have, like I said, a couple of these. I made 2 for the patterns, 1 for the tutorial, so I have plenty of these bags to be using. I'm already using one for my notions. I think it's a perfect little gift, and it's very quick to make. So if you want to gift something handmade this Christmas season, then this is the perfect project. I hope you guys enjoyed this bag as much as I did, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and all of that. And remember that all the details, the materials that I use, and all the links are going to be in the description box of this video. And I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you very soon with the next crochet pattern. Bye!